Petitions and delegations, we have Mr. Ed McLeland, Raymond March, and Gordon Powell, I guess, 5 Counties Energy from Waste Project. Kathy?
Yes. Mr. Chair, we're just bringing those gentlemen back into the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
What are they doing?
They brought me back into the meeting. Here's a few great president here and Gordon's right there. Okay.
Mr. March, Mr. Powell, and Mr. McLeland. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear fine.
Wonderful, thank you. Our chair, Chair Tom DeLine, will introduce you as an item on the agenda, and then you'll be free to address committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. So this morning, we're pleased to welcome Ed McLeland, Ray March, Gord Powell, 5 Counties Energy from Waste Project. So I'll allow you gentlemen to take charge and go ahead then, please.
Right.
Go ahead, please, Ed.
Thank you very much. And we want to thank Justin Harrell and Sharon Christopher for fitting us into your very busy planning agenda. As we traveled around Ontario promoting energy from waste technology for over 2 decades, we invariably received a question on the profitability of energy from waste plants. And so we welcome this opportunity to develop and quantify the 4 revenue streams that make EFW plants profitable. And I will use the estimated 4 revenue streams of the 160,000 ton per year energy from waste facility that we are proposing for the 5 counties, which includes Hastings. First of all, revenue stream number 1, tipping fees. If the tipping fees are around $75 per ton, that will generate $12 million in annual revenue. Revenue stream number 2 is electrical energy. Every ton of residual waste, depending on the mix, when converted to energy, will produce approximately 800 kilowatt hours of clean, renewable energy. Typically, 12% of the electrical energy generated will be required for internal plant services, but the balance will be split between Ontario Hydro grid and the thermal markets. At 8 cents per kilowatt hour for electrical energy, that energy will generate revenue, annual revenue of $5 million. The third revenue stream is thermal energy. And thermal energy is marketed as steam and or hot water for industrial processes. Marketing the thermal energy, of course, is dependent on a plant site adjacent to an industrial or commercial complex. Thermal energy revenue is estimated at $4 million per year. The fourth revenue stream is metal recovery. Scrap metal recovered from the bottom ash stream typically weighs in at around 3% of the waste being processed. The annual sale of 4,800 tons of scrap metal will produce revenue of $1.2 million. So in summary, from these 4 streams, a typical energy from waste annual report will include revenue of $23 million, a debt retirement payment of around $10 million, with an operating plant cost of $6 million, and it will show a profit of around $7 million. For comparison, the current annual budget for the Peterborough landfill predicts an operating deficit of around $3 million. And just as a PS, if we were in the United States, an energy from waste facility would claim a 5th revenue stream from the collection and processing of used drugs. We don't have that in Canada yet. That's the end of my presentation. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. This is Ray March. We're now back onto the first slide of the presentation. And this is a very happy presentation. I think we're bringing you some good news today. And we're starting off with all the glorious horror of a dump. So this is a problem. We want to advance a study, a feasibility study, and to look at waste disposal and to try to join the 5 counties, Hastings, Kawartha Lakes, Northumberland, Peterborough, and Prince Edward, into one unit of 500,000 people and be able to bring about an energy from waste. Next slide, please. Here are the 5 counties. Here's a chemist, Ray March. I was a chemist. Ed McLeland is an engineer, you've just heard, and Gord Powell is a family physician. And we have been, the 3 of us have been working on this. Thank you. Next slide, please. The agenda. You've just heard of some $23 million in income from a plant like Clarington. And I'm going to tell you at the end, the feasibility study number 4 here, how much it might cost you to join the club that generates some $23 million in this way. First of all, the energy from waste description, and then we look at Durham, York, or Clarington, the concept of the 5 counties, and the feasibility recommendation. Next slide, please. Energy from waste. This is waste, of course, is mainly organic, and we're looking at the non-recyclable waste that we can convert to energy, heat fuels, electricity, and conversion can occur through a number of processes, chemical combustion, etc. We're not going to talk about many of those today. We have a little diagram. I forgot that this new scheme of ours, new form of presentation, was with the guidance of one of my granddaughters, Rebecca Hubble. Here's a little cartoon of waste. There is separation by the resident, there is separation at a transfer station, and there is separation at the site of the energy from waste. Because the people who operate Clarington do not want to find propane cylinders being brought in and thrown into their machinery. An embarrassing question, perhaps, but have you been to Clarington? Clarington's been with us now for 5.5 years. It hasn't been open to us for the last year, but have you been? And if you haven't been, have you taken a virtual tour? Because today's presentation is entirely concerned with what goes on in Clarington. We're not inviting something new. We simply want a copy of the state of the art now and about half the size of Clarington's plant. Next slide, please. The process for collection is, of course, the garbage trucks come and pick it up. Residents make some separation themselves, but the municipal trucks pick it up to a transfer station. They're emptied, waste material is sorted, and then the waste material is compacted into high density trucks having a cylindrical tank. Now, the people of Durham and York, the last thing they wanted was to have hundreds of garbage of municipal waste trucks arriving at Clarington every day. So Clarington, in fact, has 22 trucks arrive within a 24-hour period, approximately 65 minutes apart. And within the, when those high density trucks arrive, they simply incline the holding tank and vibrate it, and everything is shaken out onto the floor right in front of the area where the fire is, where the combustion process goes on. And then we have a little cartoon here at the bottom of residential garbage, municipal collection, transfer, high density transportation, and then into the energy from waste facility. Next slide, please. Energy from waste. Garbage is burned. It's mainly organic material, although all organic material is going to contain a little metal. When you think within our blood, there's a metal, there's iron. And in plants, there are various metals. And so in a combustion process, those metals are going to be left over at the end. That's the residual ash. The resulting thermal energy produced will generate steam, which will turn turbines, produce electricity, for which we would get some money. After the garbage is completely combusted, residual ash is treated for application to road surfaces. And that's a very successful operation at Clarington at this time. The next slide, please. The three basic principles are to reduce waste, clean energy, and efficient spending. Efficient spending. Next slide, please. The case study of the Durham York Energy Centre goes back to 1998. There were various meetings and committees and recommendations. Your pictures here, your people are just covering some of my things. Energy from waste as an alternative to landfill sites for final disposal of residential garbage. That was the resolution. It was finally approved. Next slide. And the plant was constructed and began to operate in 2015, and it's now been operating for 5.5 years. It's really quite a beautiful plant. Most people pass it by on 401 doing 100, 120 kilometers an hour and don't really know what that building is. There's no vast cloud of smoke coming out of it. There's nothing like that that would indicate some combustion process. But the energy from waste process was selected as the most environmentally sound, sustainable, and cost-effective solution. And that was approved in 2008. And so we have had this wonderful facility in our neighborhood for the past few years. Ed and I were involved in helping Durham and York in the early days, and we went through some horrendous meetings at Whitby and other areas. It was a long time ago, but it's been a wonderful adventure. Next slide, please. The concept of the 5 counties. Well, here you see on this beautiful map drawn by one of my granddaughters. They're very exceptional people. My daughters are only so-so, but my granddaughters are fantastic. So here we have the 5 counties. And if you look at that, you wonder, where is the center of that area? Well, the center of the area is pretty close to the G and H of Peterborough. And can anyone, I don't think we have sound back, but if this were a class, could anyone tell me what you'd expect to find at the G and H of Peterborough on this map? Would there be a casino? Would there be a town, a city, a church? What? Well, to answer, it's Havelock. But that's very close to the center. The population of this area by July the 1st this year should be 485,000 people, and that is increasing at the rate of 4,000 people per year. The annual tonnage of waste materials is about 140,000 tons. That's approximately half of the capacity of Clarington. And so it is recommended that the 5 counties come together, and that is a huge problem, to realize a common energy from waste facility to build a long-term waste management system for all counties, all 5 counties, and the encompassed cities. Next slide, please. The limitations and liabilities. Well, historically, of course, the most convenient solution for municipalities was to buy a piece of land, not too far from town, keep it close and handy, dump the waste, put a little cover on, and leave it, and go back, repeat ad infinitum. Eventually, it will be filled, and so when that happens, you buy another piece of land, hopefully not too far away, and repeat the process. There was little thought given to looking at liquid waste or runoff, or the myriad chemical processes that continue to occur in the landfill site until it is chemically exhausted. And that takes a long time, ladies and gentlemen, to chemically exhaust a landfill site. Next slide, please. Emissions. Organic waste does not just sit there, it is a reactive substance. With oxygen, it will undergo oxidation and produce mainly CO2, carbon dioxide. If there's no oxygen, then there will be anaerobic decomposition that will produce methane, CH4. Notice there is 1 carbon atom in each of carbon dioxide and methane. There's also bacterial decomposition. And we know that decomposition products can contribute to unpleasant olfactory clouds upon emission. I'm sure we've all walked past or near a landfill site and discovered that for ourselves. Why is methane so much worse than carbon dioxide, one might ask? It's no miracle. It's not even terribly interesting. It just happens. It is because there are more degrees of freedom, more atoms, first of all, and more degrees of freedom in methane. It can contain energy as rotation, vibration, and translation, and therefore it can absorb at more frequencies than can carbon dioxide. That is it. There's no avoiding it. And you know there's very little effort made in the 5 counties to reduce or prevent methane release from our landfill sites. Next slide, please. Landfill costs. These vary among the various municipalities. Once a site has been chosen for the landfill site, it's going to stay there. It's one of the permanent features of Canadian life, is that the landfill site doesn't move. It stays there, and there's nothing else you can do. Once it's finished, it's very handy at first, but once it's finished, then you're stuck with it pretty much forever, and certainly for our lifetimes. Once a site has been chosen from an energy from waste facility like Clarington, if the people in Clarington in, say, 60, 70 years from now say, we've had enough, we want to build a new one, a more efficient one, they can dismantle it, rip up the cement base, and you could put a school, a hospital, houses there, because there's no contamination of the land, ladies and gentlemen. Next slide. And we're coming to the end. Here's a particular interesting fact that in this county of Hastings, I think there will be 44,128 people on the 1st of July of this year. Now, if anyone disagrees with me, I won't take it personally. We can try to reach a compromise and come up with a better figure. But these are the best figures I can get at the moment. And there's a total of 485,000 there. And that's 100%. These are based on the CanStats in 2015 plus estimates from that time. And as I say, an annual increase of 4,000. So if it takes us 8 years to come to some agreement to build an energy from waste facility, then the population 8 years from now will be 32,000 greater than the 485 that it is at present. The problem is not getting smaller. Next slide, please. And we're close to the end. The Feasibility Committee. The Feasibility Committee we are proposing should be made up of one person from each of the counties, plus an experienced environmental consultant for whom we would have to pay. It's his or her salary that is the sticking point with the Feasibility Committee. There are 2 methods here. This is because Peterborough thought it would in a moment of great relaxation, it said perhaps we could give $100,000, and later they changed their mind and said no, that was a mistake. So we're back to looking at a strictly population-based formula for arriving at something like 200,000 to pay for the Feasibility Committee to get everything started. Next slide, please. The cost to the taxpayer. We're close to the end. In 2019, the cost to operate and monitor 183 open and closed landfill sites in the 5 counties, and we did this survey or inventory last summer, was $27.5 million. That was the cost of monitoring and operating. The estimated cost for an energy from waste facility with an annual capacity of 200,000 would be approximately $200 million. Now, don't have a heart attack. We are not going to ask you to dive into your pockets and bring out something towards $200,000. Remember that today interest rates are astonishingly low. Private bankers will be sought to cover the entire cost. And one I'm sure is listening to our discussion this morning. Power would be generated from an energy from waste facility that we create in the post-Pickering nuclear power station era, because Pickering is due to go off stream 2023 or 2024, depending when the government decides would be a convenient time. So that we have low interest rates, private bankers with lots of money that would like to take on a money-making proposition, which we could pay off over several years, and the power would not be subject to a tremendous amount of competition because of Pickering going off stream. What does the public think about this? The public, as far as I know, and I've been involved for 20 years in this game, since I first went to Syracuse with our dear mayor from Peterborough, Sylvia Sutherland, in 2002. The people have had very little say. And the parish of St. John in Peterborough last February wished to express to the city and county of Peterborough their conviction that the unfettered use of landfill sites should be terminated. The people strongly encouraged the city and county to look seriously at alternatives to the Bensford Road landfill site. We join our voices to others advocating for an energy from waste facility similar to the one in Clarington. So we know how much the Feasibility Committee will cost. We know what the Hastings contribution will be, $18,191. And I wondered if you're able to take a collection this morning, or do you want us to make you a loan? That's just a humorous touch at the end. Next slide, please. And that is to, I think I've covered all of this. No. The committee will be guided by an expert. The expert would come from HDR in Toronto, environmental expert, and one person who was willing, of course, it's not our position to appoint, but one person who's willing is Larry Fedek, and that's a cost of up to $200,000. We've arranged an agenda that includes a business plan, environmental assessment, shared costs and income, contract the sale of electricity and thermal energy, and select an energy from waste location. And we even found someone who would be willing to accommodate an energy from waste facility. And that would be near Havelock, but we're not tied to that. So we imagine that after 1 year, the Feasibility Committee will be finished to make a recommendation, and hopefully it will be replaced by a 5 counties Energy from Waste Facility Management Committee. Next slide, please. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your time today. We appreciate it enormously. Thank you.
Okay, I'll open the floor to questions if I could from anybody. Are we back there, Kathy?
Sorry, my apologies. Councillor Stefanski and Councillor Bodnar.
Please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Perhaps we could be enlightened of the life expectancy of a facility like that, and what would the total cost of it be? Thank you.
Sorry, who is this? Is this here? Councillor Bodnar?
No, this would be Councillor Stefanski, Mr. March.
Sorry?
Councillor Stefanski.
The lifetime would be 70-80 years. The cost we've estimated around about $200 million. That, with our discussions with one person, a wealth banker or a merchant banker, if you wish, representing Bank of Montreal, or associated with Bank of Montreal, estimates that 200 million is not far away from the estimated cost, perhaps 5-6 years from now.
Thank you. Sorry, Carl, go ahead.
Sorry, may I ask another question? Is
Yes,
the
please.
northern townships in our county would have to facilitate a transfer station themselves to bring this product, let's call it a product, to the Havelock station. So that increases our costs substantially. So that is going to result in a burden to our taxpayers. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you,
There
Carl.
are a number of transfer stations in operation right now within the 5 counties. It is a way of course, separating recyclable from non-recyclable, and that really is a good income stream. And so the more that we recognize as being recyclable, the more funds we can raise. So transfer stations are in fact a way of getting a better product and more money.
Thank you. There was one more question there, I believe, Councillor Bodnar.
Yes, we are at the top of the county, the farthest away from such a facility. We have 9 landfills as we sit right now. Changing those from a waste site to a transfer station is costly. We've discussed this with the government on several occasions, and the cost from shipping from that distance would put it out of the ballpark. What is your solution for that?
Well, if you said 9 landfill sites, you don't need 9 transfer stations. There's a concentration as one goes from individual pickups to a landfill site. And
We do
one
not
would
have
move-
curbside pickup.
Pardon?
We do not have curbside pickup.
You don't have curbside pickup.
Correct.
Could I make just a comment? The feasibility study ends up with a business plan. And one of the principal articles in the business plan is an analysis of the effective transfer of waste across the whole 5 counties to minimize the cost of transferring and transfer stations and so on. So that's a major study within the feasibility that we're talking about. The feasibility study for $200,000 is a gigantic plan to handle the garbage from 5 counties effectively and cost lowest possible cost. Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from committee?
We have Councillor Albert.
Councillor Albert?
Would the feasibility study look at the cost for each municipality that we must pay for the next 25 years when we close a waste site, that we have to monitor it? Would you be looking at that cost also in there? Because I'm thinking of my Councillor Bodnar with 9, we have 2, and we continue to monitor them, of course. And once we close it, you have a 25 years that you must continue to monitor. So there's a big cost to every one of us too. So will you be working that in?
The
Feasibility committee would look at all aspects of the 5 counties coming together and changing the type of waste disposal method. I can't really say more than that. Everything would be discussed there. But if another possibility which we haven't discussed is that once there's an energy from waste site, you can begin to mine closed landfill sites. That is, you can begin to dig the stuff up because when it is combusted, it's worth money. It's only costing money in the ground. And if we're able to mine sites, at least to reduce the number, because we discovered 183, not in Ontario, in 5 counties, are costing us money at the moment. That's got to change.
I think to a comment to Councillor Albert, if I may, the life cycle of a landfill is 200 years after closing. So it's not a matter of 25 years. It's a long-term proposition, 200 years of maintenance. Yeah.
Thank you for the answers. And I do know that I would presume that your total cost estimates with this planning document stage, which is really all we're talking about here at this time, would include all of those elements to come back from a cost factor for the municipalities so that they would know not only what the costs are for the new energy from waste facility and carry forward, but also what the wrap-up cost would be. I think that would be the way to do the study, and then you got everything covered.
Yes, there is a major transfer of waste study included in the business plan, right?
Mr.
Thank
Chair,
you.
Councillor O'Neill wishes to speak.
Yes, please, Councillor.
I'm
Thank
sorry.
you, through you, Mr. Chair. I actually was working at Clarington at times that this unit was being developed, and there was a great deal of public resistance to this facility. And I guess I would like to know how you would propose to present this to the public in a way that you had public input.
I'm sorry, there's no indication of who was speaking there, and it makes it very difficult to hear and understand without knowing which photograph is surrounded by a green border, as mine is now. Who was the previous speaker?
The
Mr.
previous
Markey.
speaker, go ahead, Kathy, go ahead.
The previous speaker was Councillor O'Neill, and her question was, how do you propose to manage any public concern or backlash as a result of the project?
We had a year or so ago, we had constructed some essays and lectures, and we were going to have a number of public meetings to warm people up to this idea. And of course, around about March the 13th, my birthday, everything stopped a year ago. And so we haven't done that. We do have a Facebook group in Peterborough that has 137, I think, people. These are mainly young people. And they are getting involved, and that aspect is increasing at the moment. But it is not up to us to call public meetings. We would love to, but at the moment we're restricted to these Zoom meetings, which I would hesitate to have with more than, say, 20 people. It gets a little difficult to handle. But the voices will be heard. The one I told you of St. John's was a motion that went to the diocese in Toronto. That's how they spoke, decided to speak up.
I think you'll find the environmental process that follows that is very wide open. And I'll go back, if I might, to our committee. To a number of years ago, I was chair of what they call the dump gang in this area here. And we looked at many things, including energy from waste at that time. At that time, we didn't have the professional basis of, in my personal opinion, of getting rid of the waste at the end. I'd like to see, when we're all done here, if we decide to go ahead with something like this, I'd like to see how we're going to dispose of that final basis in an asphalt product that doesn't contaminate the roads later on. So those are all those things. As far as the public input process, it's going to be a public input process, I can guarantee you. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other quick questions, and then we'll try to get on. Go ahead, Carl.
Yes, thank you. Dr. March, as we all know that technology moves in leaps and bounds, and with an estimated life expectancy of this facility of 78 years, it perhaps would be required to look at microwaving waste, as they have developed this for crematorium purposes on a larger scale. It's probably, now this is perhaps just a pipe dream, but I'm sure that there could be an eventuality of expanding that technology.
Yes,
Thank you.
it could be. It could be.
Okay, any other quick questions from committee?
Mr. Chair, Deputy Warden Adams wishes to speak.
Yes, Deputy Warden?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I would concur with Councillor Bodnar and Councillor Stefanski and Councillor Albert's statements from earlier on. Hastings County is vast, and the same as Councillor Bodnar, is way at the top. So there would be some, I would believe the transportation costs would be prohibitive, but having said that, we haven't done the study, so we really don't know the answers. We don't know the answers going forward, how this is all going to play out. So my understanding today is that the delegation is here looking for $18,191 in order to do the feasibility study. That's correct, isn't it?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, okay. So I would make the recommendation to defer this to finance.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am.
I have a mover to defer the request for the funding to Finance Committee. Is there a seconder? Seconded by His Honor. Is there any more questions at this stage? Okay, those
Oh.
against?
Councillor
Sorry,
Sorry,
Chair DeLine, Councillor Kruger wishes to speak.
please, Councillor Kruger.
Through the chair, I just want to ask, with this feasibility study, are we going to be looking at how this is going to affect our municipal staff? Because this is talking about people's livelihood as well. And I'm worried we're in small rural areas where these people rely on jobs within our municipality. And I just hate to think that at the end of the day, they may not have jobs if we go through with this. Thank you.
Yes,
So
when-
the motion, if I might, sorry.
yes,
about that.
I agree.
Cut you off, but the motion is to extend this to the Finance Committee for a report back and a recommendation. Is there anybody else on that motion? I'll call a motion. Those against? Hearing none, I'll declare the motion carried and thank the gentleman very much for the presentation